of a break. That's the good news for us, but unfortunately we're still holding on to this very active stretch, so it will mean a couple more systems down the pipeline as we quickly start to close in on Christmas. We are keeping the 19 first alert weather day going until basically 12:30, but I think really once we get within this next 30 minutes to even 45 minutes, most of the heavier activity will start to clear out. That's not to say that we're going to be completely dry once we get into the early part of the afternoon, but you're beginning that drying trend. When you look at radar, you can tell western Pennsylvania is really where we're seeing most of the moisture sitting at this point, but we still have a couple areas, and you look down towards, say, northern Medina County, even parts of Lorain County, but extending up through northern Summit, southern Cuyahoga, and that's where you're going to start to see that more drastic drop in visibility, potentially some light quick accumulation on some of those grassy surfaces, but road temperatures are still low to mid 30s, so a lot of this is melting on contact, and that is good news for us. Down to the southeast, we still have a little bit of a wintry mix. Temperatures just a touch warmer in this zone, but again, this is really where you're going to see probably the bigger impacts out of this entire system, and this will eventually extend up towards the northeast as well. Places like Ashtabula County, you're going to continue to deal with maybe some of this activity a little bit longer than, say, folks a little farther out to the west. But if you're stepping out, temperatures right now about low to mid 30s. You can see why we had that concern with some locations still close to 32 degrees. Bridges and overpasses, we'll still watch if they stay slick for, I would say, the next couple hours or so, but we are going to trend towards the mid 30s later this afternoon with a drying trend for most, though lake effect snow is back in the forecast later tonight. I'll walk you through who could see that coming up in just a few minutes. We close out the month of December. In fact, it does look like this weather pattern will stay very active through likely the end of the month. Now, whether or not that means it's all going to be snow versus a bit of a wintry mix like what we saw today, all very temperature dependent. Let's walk you through the rest of this afternoon, because you'll notice we are winding down the 19 first alert weather day for today, mainly because the heavier burst of snow and that potential for freezing rain, which really kind of prompted all of this earlier today, is finally starting to work its way off towards the east. It's not to say the impacts are zero as we go into the afternoon, but you're starting to see that drier air mixing in from the west and really eating away at some of these rain and snow chances. Certainly this corridor right here, basically from northern Summit County up through Geauga, southern Ashtabula, this is where you're going to see some of those slightly bigger, chunkier snowflakes continuing to fall across our area. Not really going to amount to a whole lot, maybe some minor accumulation on those grassy and elevated surfaces, but this is really just going to be kind of tracking the very tail end of this system as we approach that 3 o'clock hour today. So likely once we get into our afternoon newscasts, we're not really going to be seeing a whole lot left on radar. However, there is going to be a wind shift, and that will help to bring us at least a window of opportunity for some lake effect snow late tonight. This is not a very organized system, so I don't anticipate a ton in the way of accumulation, maybe a quick inch. Plus, if you are able to see that band basically set up for a couple of hours, that's when you could see that plus side coming into factor. But I mean, for the most part, this is going to be a pretty dry night for a lot of us heading into your early Thursday. And that's the break you want before we start to track a more different change by the time we get into the weekend. That does include some snow, especially as we look ahead towards your Friday, but it all comes with an Arctic front, and that's going to plunge that temperature for Saturday as well as Sunday, with daytime highs at best into the mid and upper 20s. So make sure you have that warm weather gear close by, because you're going to definitely need it the next couple of days. Here's your future view. We're fast forwarding through tomorrow, because really the biggest impact tomorrow is just more of those clouds across our area. But by late tomorrow night, you're already starting to see that next system move through. This is going to be a very lighter air mass, meaning it's not going to have a lot of moisture with it. Today's has a lot of moisture because temperatures are as warm as they are. But we're going to be cooling off that air mass, and we're going to be dealing with a very light, very fluffy snow trying to work through parts of northeast Ohio. I think a quick inch, maybe 2 inches possible for those that see the snow. But again, it's not necessarily going to be for everybody. And I really think that's your best next organized chance to see this activity before we approach Christmas. Again, this weekend will be cold. We will watch for some lake effect snow as we go through the day on Saturday, but a warming trend does take over through the early part of this next week, though I will say it looks pretty active Tuesday into Wednesday. Right now, still trending warm enough that likely we are going to be dealing with a wintry mix to potentially just all rain by the time we get into Christmas.